What's up, everybody? This is Raphael Garcia back for another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. It is Thursday, October 19th, and man, this year just kind of flown by, but we're back here for another day to talk, or another evening, I should say, to talk all things MMA. And we have kind of a full slate to get down and rap about because we have two events this weekend and we have quite a bit of news to go over from this past week. Some pretty interesting topics, and my partner in crime, Schwan will be joining us. He said in 4 minutes, so let's hold him to that. 4 minutes, guys. That means by 8:05 he should be on this line and in the show. So with that in mind, before we get there, I just want to, as always, say thank you for taking the time to listen to the show and like and share our content on. You can find us here on YouTube as well. You can follow us on iTunes and like our content there, and on Stitcher and SoundCloud. As always, you can check us out and listen to our content. Be sure to share it across your social media spectrum. We appreciate you doing so. We appreciate all the comments, even the ones that are pretty rude. Sometimes we see those every now and then on our live chats, but that's just how it goes. The internet is the place where humanity goes to die, it seems like. So yeah, we get some of those ridiculous comments. And also, I stumbled upon this week, I guess we should finally pat ourselves on the back, as in like, mama, we finally made it, because I found another YouTube channel that has been pirating some of our work, but basically stripping our shows and putting them up on their channel. I don't know if it's a fan site or whatever it may be, but found that this week, so that was pretty interesting, pretty intriguing to find. So we'll be talking about that, not talking about it, but I will be reaching out to them to get some of our stuff taken down. But either way, that's neither here nor there. We are back to talk about MMA, and there's definitely plenty to talk about. So I want to begin first. I have a couple of things I actually want to add to the agenda for tonight's show, but we're going to be talking about MMA weight cutting, which is an issue that continues to rear its ugly head. So we will be talking about that. I want to talk about obviously the fight cards from this week. I want to talk about the Cyborg Holly Holm rivalry that's developing. I'm still surprised that the UFC has not gotten that fight together, but I want to talk about that. I want to talk about a couple of Dana White comments too, as well, because he's had praise. He's once again giving Ronda Rousey a bunch of praise, still talking highly about her, and he also has some pretty strong words about John Jones this past week as well. So we're going to talk about that and just talk about a couple of different things. So Schwan just said he'll be on in a second. It's 8:04. So remember, we're going to hold him to that 8:05 timeline. So let's see. We're going to start right at the top with the MMA, the idea of weight cutting in MMA, and this growing, I guess, movement. I won't say movement, but this growing idea that adding more weight classes would help. And while I understand the idea behind it, you think that adding in additional weight classes would help it would help some of the large gaps in between weight classes. And while I get that, there's also going to always be the I guess the there's going to be a bunch of problems there. This isn't solving weight cutting isn't a one swing of the stick type of fix. You got to do a lot of different things. It's kind of like, we talk about crime in an area, or we talk about poverty, we talk about racism. It's not just you do one thing. Um, Not just like you would do one thing. You have to take multiple steps, and you have to figure out and solve a whole bunch of problems before you solve the overall problem. So with weight cutting, you have multiple problems that need to be addressed, and kind of understood before fighters are put in a better position to manage their weight. And again, this isn't just make some more weight classes and it'll be solved. It's much more than that. And we're definitely going to talk about that. I was looking at this conversation because it's come up with the idea, I think it was California, is putting out the idea of adding more weight classes. They wanted to add a 65, a 75, a 195, and I think a 215 maybe. But there was talk of adding those weight classes. Dana White UFC has already gone on the record to say that they're not adding any more weight classes. I don't blame them. If it was me personally, I would think that there's space to add one between 55 and 70. I think there's space to add one there. And so that would be the 165 weight class. You move 170 to 175, and then maybe add a 195 weight class between 205 and 185. That one is kind of sketchy. Yeah, 195. That one's kind of sketchy. The bigger guys, I don't think you really need to add a weight class there, because you really don't see or hear too much about the weight issues there. Weight issues tend to be at the lower scales. I mean, we see the Ray Borgs, we see the John Linekers, we see the Kevin Lees, so many guys that have Kelvin Gastelum, so many guys that have had weight cutting issues on the lower end of the spectrum. So you would think that that's where the problem solving needs to go, and I think that that's where the it should happen. And I wouldn't be upset with a 165 weight class and bumping up 170 to 175, but in reality, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that there, but in reality, the honest that's where a lot of those weight struggles are coming when you look at the lower weight class. You kind of see them doing that with the women now that they're adding in the flyweight division to try to give them some buffer, because that 125, excuse me, that 115, 135 gap was crazy. So I think it'll be interesting. And there are other steps that I think that should come into play when it's time to talk about weight cutting. I'm not opposed to the idea of guys being checked for maintaining their weight during, I don't want to say during the off season, but in between fights. I actually train with a guy now who fights at 135, 135 pounds, and we were having a conversation the other day, and he was weighing near 170, and he has a fight in December. I mean, I looked at him like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Because that's almost 40 some odd pounds that he may have to find himself needing to cut between now and December. And granted, people are athletes. When they get into that weight cutting mode, when they get into that heavy training, weight begins to fall off, but that's still dangerous. I think you would be hard pressed to find a doctor anywhere that would say it's not a major risk to go down 40 pounds in such a way in like 8 weeks or 10 weeks. So I wouldn't be opposed to weight cutting measures being managed in between fights. Now that brings up the question: well, who pays for it? Does the commission pay for it? Are you looking at organizations to begin paying for it? Because that's a struggle there. Like, you can't expect the UFC to pay for a service to basically do what USADA does, but do it on a weight by weight, on a weight cutting basis. So that's one aspect of it. There's also, I'm going to absolutely monkey stomp, Stone Cold Steve Austin stomp the idea of same day weigh-ins. That shouldn't even be a thing. it shouldn't even be a thing. Like, cause I think of, I mean, I remember my time back in high school trying to make same day weigh-ins, and that was just bonkers. So I couldn't imagine the idea of doing same day weigh-ins for MMA, and that does not stop the fighters from taking their um, taking their extreme weight cutting practices, still just extending it a day longer or pushing it back a day longer, as we see. I mean, we've seen guys go through extremes to make weight for the Friday weigh-ins. What do you think would stop them from going through the same measures to make weight for the like the same day weigh-in? I just think that that's more reckless, and it's more dangerous, in my opinion, watching that occur. So there's that's added on to the conversation. So yeah, in my opinion, I just think that if you look at weight cutting, you have to look at it in a way where it's like, what's the wholesale solution here? What are the multiple steps we're going to take to solve this problem? Because there isn't a one solution fits all. It's not just going to work that way. And then, as even on top of that, you have to treat women a little bit differently when it comes to weight cutting as well, because we know obviously clearly their bodies are different, so they have to go through something a little. The expectations for women would have to be different, just because they may not be able to be held to the same standards physiologically. So like there's that, but I don't want to mess around and say something wrong there, and yeah, so I'm not even gonna touch that. But yeah, so that was there's been a lot of conversation going on about weight cutting. I don't know if you heard, Mark Goddard has some pretty interesting things to say on the MMA Hour earlier this week. So it's going to be quite compelling to watch. I don't think there's going to be much change anytime soon, even with California adding in those weight classes, because we can't even get the commissions to really adopt the same rule sets at the same time. So how can we expect them to do the same thing when it comes to weight classes? I really just think that this management begins at the team and individual level. These teams and individuals need to kind of do a little bit better, do more weight management on their own, because guys and women missing weight is really unprofessional, and it really throws a hitch in so many different situations. I mean, it just causes so many different problems. I mean, hell, look at Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's been on the sidelines still because of weight issues and not being able to get down to the correct weight class. So there's just so many different problems with that. But yeah, that's the end of my rant when it comes to weight cutting. I just think that it's going to be something that isn't going to change too much. It's something that's always going to occur. I mean, even at the high school and college wrestling level, they've made changes, but that hasn't really stopped the extreme weight cutting that goes into those sports. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue moving on to our next topic, which is, and it's also 8:14, and Schwan has not joined us yet, so I just wanted to go ahead and point that out. The man of the hour, has not joined us. Let me do something real quick. Schwan, good
Hello.
man. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a minor issue with my kids, and their mom was very upset. They actually side note. Everybody knows my kids play basketball. They put out who was on the teams for what, and let's just say their mom was not very happy about the team they were on.
Uh-oh.
She was not. She was very upset.
Listen, an angry mother is more important than any podcast in any part of the world. So do what you got
Yeah,
to do.
I told her no, we're good now. But I told her I was like, I got this podcast, and I just ran out of the room real fast because I was already out of arm's reach, so she couldn't grab me. So I just said, I
Okay,
got this
okay.
podcast.
Run out the room. Do me a favor, man. Turn me down a little bit on your end. I can still hear. I can hear the echo.
Yeah, that better.
Yeah, that's better. So, we were talking about MMA weight cutting. We're not going to go back to it just because we were going back and forth, or I was talking about the developments in weight cutting and what kind of can change and solution wise. We're not going to do that, but let's continue on with some of the things that we're talking about today. And I want to go into the conversation around Cyborg and Holly Holm. Have you seen their back and forth as of yet? Late?
Yeah, I've seen it, and somebody needs to rein Cyborg in, man. I don't know what they're telling her.
What do you mean?
Well, like I've seen how she feels like she's being targeted, which I understand that to a degree, but I'm like, when you've had her history, you have to really expect people to be a little bit harsher on you than they would on others. I mean, as far as I know, Holly's never failed a test, so even though everything should be up and even, I don't know that you can really make that accusation. That's a very bold accusation to make for someone who's failed or been flagged more than once.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you there. Well, actually, yeah, you're right. She's only failed one test, and she had that situation earlier this year. When you Are you still surprised that the UFC hasn't made this fight yet? I'm wondering what's keeping them from making this fight and putting it on the year-end card. Like both women have basically asked for, so I'm wondering what's really kind of keeping them out of the octagon.
I wasn't aware that Cyborg had actually signed a new contract with the UFC. I know she fought out her last fight, and so she was done. But I don't know that she signed a new contract. They might be in contract negotiations right now because I know that she also made a comment about an issue with money as far as a fight with Holly Holm and how much she was getting paid.
That's true. That's true. I remember her saying something along the lines of that they offered her to fight Tanya Evinger more than they were offering her to fight Holly Holm, which I think is ridiculous. I would love to see the numbers and see the figures and see if that's actually the case because I would be pretty amazed if they did that.
The thing I've always had a problem with Cyborg, and I've said this many times on the show. Fans of the show know I've said this, and you'll be like, he's saying this again. But I have no idea why. I understand why she signed with the UFC to a degree. It's the biggest organization, fine. But it seems like an organization that does not like you. Why would you sign somewhere where people have openly allowed other fighters, male and female, to mock you, to ridicule you, to make comments about you? You even had the face of the organization taking shots at you. Why would you willingly sign to a company or want to come back to a company that's treated you in that manner? Ronda never got treated in that manner. Holly Holm's never been talked about in that manner. Even Misha Tate, who wasn't always on the best terms, was never talked about in that manner. She's getting treated like Tito Ortiz got treated. Like, why would you sign on to go fight for this organization when there's other organizations that want you to go out there and will really champion you and push you as a superstar and as a champion of their divisions? Like, why would you set yourself up for that?
Well, do you think it's a money thing? I mean, because flat out, no other organization is going to be able to pay her the way they do. And then on top of that, there are still those people who want to have the toughest challenges. Just looking at what Cyborg has said over the years, I think she does want to be challenged. She's tired. I don't want to say she's tired of smashing cans. I don't know. I don't speak for her directly. I have not spoken to her, but I wonder if that plays a part in it as well too. Is if like because she could go to Bellator and what she would be fighting Julia Budd and Marlos Conan. She can't go back to Invicta because Megan Anderson is gone now, so there's no one really there for her to fight. So I wonder if it's really more about the money or if it's more about the potential for fights to kind of strengthen her legacy.
Well, you see, you're an intelligent person, so I'm just gonna ask you, who was she fought in the UFC so elite? I mean,
I mean,
Tanya Evinger, I like her. I think she's elite, but as far as the UFC is concerned, she's not elite. Lena Landsberg is not elite. Leslie Smith, a tough, gritty fighter, is also not elite. And even if she fought Holly Holm, that's Holly Holm who's won one in her last what 4 fights. So who's this elite competition that's challenging her? Because she hasn't faced any elite competition in the UFC yet.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. I think there's definitely the potential of names being there because I mean Holly Holm is a name. She may not be. She's a name in the sport. Period. I'm not even going to kind of denigrate that in any way, shape, or form. And you still have Kat Zingano that's looking that's still trying to get that fight made. The opportunity for bigger, more lucrative financial fights are within the UFC, and that's kind of flat and plain and simple.
Well, that's true, but those girls to fight Cyborg, like the money they paid Holly Holm to fight Betch, she's not taking to fight Cyborg. The money they paid Kat Zingano to fight Julia Pena, she's not taking to fight Cyborg. They're gonna want bigger paydays. So even though Cyborg's the champ and she's the big, supposedly the big draw, I don't know that her being on a pay per view or being on a show adds to huge ratings. So she's not going to be getting this big payday that she wants because they're going to have to pay whoever fights her a lot more money to get that fight. And Holly Holm already makes top end money in the UFC. We already know that because they talked about that before she got signed to fight the Rousey fight. They paid a lot of money to have Holly Holm, and that's why they rushed her. So Holly Holm's going to get top notch money, and Holly Holm's her management fought for her to get that money. Obviously, Cyborg's management didn't, I guess, and now they're in their midst of a negotiation. So can they? It's like they have to, for a fight to happen, they have to pay both people. That costs money. They have a certain budget, and they want to see a return if they're going to pay that money. They don't mind paying Nate Diaz $1 million and Connor $2 million because they know they're going to make that back. Are they really going to pay Cyborg what she wants and Holly Holm what she wants? Because Holly Holm's not a draw, and I don't know that Cyborg is either. I don't know that Cyborg gets you 400,000 buys on her own.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, man. I'm not going to argue with you at that point there. So what would you do with her? Who would, if you had the ability to do matchmaking, who would you place her against next?
I would say Holm is probably the best option because even though Holmes lost a few, she hadn't been dominated. When she lost against Tate, it was last second. She was really competitive with Randami, and Randami's a top level kickboxer, so you have to assume that if you use MMA math, that she should be able to at least hang with Cyborg. And plus, Holly's a mover. She's mobile. She's long. She's athletic. So she should be able to present a challenge that Cyborg hasn't previously had to deal with as far as girls who could only stand there and let her maul them or would just come straight ahead and get countered. So it's a stylistic matchup. So Holmes really the best option. I don't know why they even put Kat Zingano out there. But to me, Holmes is the best option. But at this stage, they just need someone who's willing to fight her. And everybody who's willing to fight her wants to get paid a lot of money to fight her unless they fight at a catch weight. So Holmes the best option as far as money. Holmes the best option as far as competition. That's pretty much it. That's the only option they have. My question is, what do they do? Let's say she fights Holmes and beats her. Who do you bring in next? There's a very finite number of people, and all the people who want to fight her want to get career paydays to fight her. So can you afford to have her fight somebody who doesn't draw?
I mean, I think you got to go with the Megan Anderson fight next. If they can't get home, they got to go with the Megan Anderson fight next. That's just
But
all I see.
but that means you have to put her on a card with somebody of value because nobody is going to pay top dollar to see Megan Anderson fight Cyborg because nobody thinks Megan Anderson can beat Cyborg. Nobody except for Megan Anderson's team, who will not be buying the pay per view, thinks she can beat Cyborg.
Do you think that there's something that Holmes' team saw in the Avenger fight that they believe gives Home an advantage against Cyborg?
Two things. First, I like Holmes' team. Jackson Wink, excellent group. But I almost stopped listening to them the first time they tried to convince me that the reason she was having tough fights early on was because she was holding back. That wasn't true then. It's not true now. Second of all, their biggest thing they're thinking is that Holm has some athleticism. Unlike most of these girls, Holm is a comparable athlete to Cyborg. Holm has an extensive background in striking, unlike most of these girls. And like I mentioned earlier, Holm can actually move around. She's long, she can circle, she can get exit on angles, she can fake, she throws a lot of volume. So in theory, Cyborg should have to work a lot harder than she normally has to work to get her offense off against Holm. So they're thinking maybe Holm can take her late in the rounds and start chopping her down and frustrate her and then chop her down late. That's what essentially I'm thinking they're seeing. Because as far as physicality and power, Holmes' chin isn't super sturdy. Cyborg can knock her out. Cyborg can definitely out grapple her, and Cyborg can definitely out wrestle her. What I think they're hoping is that Holmes' style and her length and her versatility with her strikes is going to be enough to confuse Cyborg, to frustrate Cyborg, to extend Cyborg, and hopefully finish her late.
Here's a has random question: has Home been dropped at all since she's been in the UFC?
Mm, I can't remember. I want to say she
Did
was against
did
she was dropped. No,
Shevchenko?
she was dropped against Pennington. Pennington dropped her.
Okay, okay. I was just curious. I was just curious about that. But I think this is still a fight I want to see, especially after all the Ronda back and forth.
No, I understand. I think it's a fight people will want to see. I just don't know it's a financially soluble fight where Cyborg's going to get the money she like. You know how you were saying earlier, the UFC pays the best money, right?
Yeah,
Well, Cyborg's expecting to get. She's a champion. She wants to get paid like the best. I don't know that the UFC is going to offer her that kind of money because they have to pay. They have a budget. They have to pay home too. It's the same thing in boxing. I can't just give you all the money you want because I got to pay this other guy too. They might not have it. And Home might not agree to less. Home wants to be paid what she wants to be paid for the challenge she's facing. I don't know the UFC can pay both. I mean, they can. I don't know that they will because they won't get that return on their investment. Because nobody really believes anybody can beat Cyborg. That's the big thing about it. Nobody really thinks anybody has a chance against him, against her.
I mean, hey, I'm not going to disagree with you there. Like that's definitely been the mantra for a very long time, and it's just going to be. I wonder if we're ever going to see it happen. If we're ever going to see her get get defeated, or if we're ever going to see something happen where she just doesn't look like the rampaging machine like that she always does.
It's possible. I mean, she's getting older, and like I said, stylistically, it's very interesting. But there's one point I wanted to make. This is what happens when you have an organization that bashes a fighter and then tries to flip the switch and turn the fighter into some kind of fan favorite. The UFC has been running her through the mud for the past year and a half. She's a baby. She didn't take this fight. She had all these special requests. She used this. She used that. They let Ronda take shots at her for years, and now they're trying to sell her. People don't have that short of a memory. They remember all the stuff they said about her. And that's also contributing to the problem. I'm not saying it would have made her a huge superstar, but you made it harder, making her any sort of draw or any sort of sympathetic figure by the way you've been running her into the ground for the past couple years. You allowed somebody to openly call her a cheater and a coward and a man. Cause problems whenever she got into a good position.
I mean, hell, the leader of the organization called her Wanderlei Silva in a dress. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
It's like if somebody asked you on Twitter, "Well, Raphael, what do you think about Schwan?" Schwan doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. And then be like, "I don't understand why our ratings are going down." Well, you just told people I'm a moron. Why would they tune into a show to hear me talk and I'm an idiot and my co-host said I'm an idiot?
basically.
Exactly. They sabotage themselves and now they're trying to make money. And women fights are already hard enough to sell. Men fights are too. They don't have many legitimate stars, but you have everybody who wants to get paid like they are a star. They think their record and their talent justifies them getting paid, and in a perfect world it does. But they have a budget, and nobody wants to pay someone $500,000 for 100,000 for 100,000 in pay-per-views. That doesn't cut. That doesn't make money.
Yeah, so I'm not going to disagree with you there. So let's move it on and let's talk about our next topic here, where we have speaking of comments and that have been made in recent developments. Did you see what Dana White said about John Jones and also about Ronda Rousey today?
About how he
I
was
think
no longer invested in Jones.
well, that's part of it, but he also said that Jones is the biggest waste of talent in all of sports.
Yeah,
Did you see that
oh yeah,
comment?
I did hear that, and I'm not a big Dana fan, but it's really hard to argue against that.
See, it took. I don't know if I can sit and like, man, I'm sitting here and I can think of some names that people can probably throw out there, like the Boz, maybe, and maybe Daryl Strawberry, or maybe who else could I think of that maybe, or maybe like a Jason Williams. I'm not sure if in the NBA, not sure if many people really remember him. Um, there are some names that might be thrown out there too as well, but man, like I can't really think of who else I could add to the conversation. I mean,
Yeah, the reason
it's tough, and I hate that he's taking because he does have some personal issues that when he takes shots at John Jones that I don't like. But man, it's real tough.
I think he's on one instance I think he's unfair, but the reason some of the examples you use didn't work for me is because like you talked about the Boz. The Boz wasn't he wasn't an all-time great talent. To compare Jones, it had to be like comparing him to LeBron James. LeBron James or somebody like a Ben Simmons or somebody who's a transcendent all-time great right off the boat. That's John Jones. Or comparing him to like kind of a Floyd Mayweather. But even though Floyd had all these problems, it never impacted Floyd's career. He didn't miss a bunch of fights. He didn't stop racking up world championships. He still was able to compete and do so at a high level throughout his career. John Jones is a transcendent talent. He's beaten almost what 6 champions. He's beaten some of the best guys in the world, and he's done it easily. And he's not able to fight not because he wasn't good enough, because he wasn't tough enough, because he wasn't skilled enough. He's not able to fight because he can't get out of his own way. So it's like in that
Yeah.
instance, you have to, for you to be a waste of talent, you have to have the talent. And John Jones has transcendent, once in a lifetime talent, and he's essentially the only person who's defeated John Jones is himself in a telephone pole.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm not gonna disagree with you there, man. That's definitely. Uh, I mean, it's hard. Like, I hate to look at that conversation and think of anyone else that would matter in the conversation, but it's crazy close. It's crazy close to try to think of someone who else would fit into that conversation and say, yeah, who like who else is a major waste of talent that isn't that would make that would kind of push through that conversation. Who's worse? And I can't think of anyone.
Not at the pro level, maybe Todd Marinovich, because at one point he was supposed to be the prototypical quarterback.
That's close. What was the who was the other quarterback? God, I can't think of his
Are you talking
name.
about
It
Ryan
was
Leaf?
Ryan Leaf. Yes.
Now, see, though, and once again, you're right on that. But the only reason we can't ever go with that is because it'd be like, because John Jones actually achieved his potential
Yeah.
and was showing it.
Ryan Leaf
Ryan Leaf
sucked from day
never
one.
showed his potential. We never saw how good he was. We don't even know if he was that good. John Jones was the best fighter in the world, and he threw that all away. So it's like having a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, maybe or Aaron Rodgers. Gets suspended for drugs and gets suspended for drunk driving and running away from a car. It'd be that comparison because those are the guys who were considered the best in their positions or one of the best. You'd have to compare him to somebody of that ilk, LeBron James. LeBron James, by the comparison, has never gotten any trouble at all, and John Jones can't seem to avoid it no matter what he does.
Yeah, man. I'm not even. I don't even know what
My,
the.
my big problem is that Dana's kind of kicking him when he's down. Like, you don't really have to say this, dude. I mean, it might be true, but you don't really have to say that.
And I'm way because he also talked about what's her name, Ronda Rousey, and he has nothing but glowing things to say about her. He says something along the lines of, she's underrated, which okay, and he's basically saying, look at what she built, as if she built, like he says, she's underrated. Look at what she did. She look at what she built. She started it all. You had such a dominant female fighter. She was so badass, and she spoke well, and she was pretty. Again, uh, that whole combination of what she was built the whole female mixed martial arts phenomenon. She was the right person at the right time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Ronda's as far as her skill, she's a little bit overrated because she wasn't really a good striker. She wasn't really a good all round grappler. She had a specific skill set, and she was able to do a couple things off it. She did them very well. She had some little creative things with it, but she wasn't particularly deep in her skill set. But to be fair, all the girls who were currently competing in bantamweight, with the exception of Amanda Nunes, if Ronda Rousey had her head actually on straight, Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm, all the girls are essentially the same girls from when she was dominant. And I can't really say that I couldn't see Ronda Rousey beating a Julia Pena or a smaller Valentina Shevchenko who wasn't going to throw a lot of volume, or beating up a Raquel Pennington or someone of that nature. Like all the girls who, or Amanda Davis, she already beat up Amanda Davis. Kat Zingano was still considered one of the better fighters in the division. She's already beaten Kat Zingano, considered one of the better fighters in the division. She's already beaten Sarah McMahon. Liz Carmouche is considered one of the better fighters. She's already beaten Liz Carmouche. So a lot of the girls she already beat on her way to being the best pound for pound female fighter are still currently competing. So it's really hard to say that she's terrible when she's garbage when all the girls she's beat are still in the top 10, top 15. And the champion has already lost to girls that she's already defeated. I think Nunes got beat by Davis in one fight outside the UFC, and she got beat by Zingano in it. I understand that was years ago, but the fact is, Ronda smoked both of them, and at some point, both of these girls defeated you. So
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to say that she's total trash and total garbage when the majority of the girls who she defeated, they're still in the UFC and they're still pretty highly ranked in the UFC. And I still can't think of maybe more than two or three girls who, if Ronda had her head on straight, I would think that she couldn't beat right now.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. Can you turn me down a little bit still? I can still hear my
Yeah, yeah.
echo, but I'm not saying that she is overrated. That's not what I'm saying. And yeah, there are still plenty of women that she could get the win against in the UFC now. What first and foremost, he needs to stop commenting on women's looks. He needs to stop doing that first and foremost. Second of all, he said she was the right woman at the right time. It's no. The answer is she was actually the most attractive woman at the right time, because this is the same guy who drew a line in the sand and said that women will never fight in the UFC until he found this blonde haired woman who was an attractive individual to the much of the demographic of the UFC's fan base. That's why she got the opportunity that other women did not get before her. Um, and then
I
on,
think you have. Go
go
ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
But like I think like that's kind of what is being ignored there, because he's making it seem like she pulled herself up by her own bootstraps to make women's MMA be something that is recognizable, or be something that is respectable. It was built around her because the organization invested in her. That's something different.
Yeah, no, I think there's some legitimacy to that point. There's a lot of girls, Marlos Kunin, who never got her just due. Misha Tate was a long-time contender, multiple organization champion who never really got her due. I do think her looks has something to do with it. I think the way she came across has something to do with it. But you also have to say, the fact is, Ronda was never really in any, even win or lose, she was never in any boring fights. She just never was. To my knowledge, she never missed weight. And when she was winning, she was doing so in a manner that really stood out. Like she was just destroying girls. There was no other girl who was finishing girls the way Ronda was. And for me to act like that didn't play some kind of role in how she was perceived would be ridiculous. And I don't think she really loves MMA. I don't think she reflects the best of MMA. But I have to say she built herself up on some level. I mean, she was an Olympian. She was an Olympic judoka. That's not the easiest thing to accomplish in the world, especially considering some of these girls who fight MMA, they weren't high level athletes. They weren't, if anything, off athletic credentials, very few fighters could say they had more or less reason to be supported. And even though I think that looks really played the fact of the matter is she had to be able to fight. Paige Van Zandt
That's
got a lot
true.
of opportunities because of her looks. Paige Van Zandt's not the star Ronda is because A, she's not as charismatic, and B, she can't fight as well. I mean, when it comes down to it, they can build you up as much as you want, but you have to be able to perform. And up until she fought Holly Holm, even in that fight, she had some moments. She was able to perform. Now, I agree with you. They're getting downplayed, but the fact of the matter is, if he didn't find Ronda, he was. I don't believe he was going to put women in the UFC. And while Ronda was overrated to a certain degree, and Ronda got too much credit, the fact of the matter is she was like a streaking star, and that helped a lot of these other girls who have other divisions to go into. It all started with her. So to a certain degree, I have to acknowledge just think they kind of overrated her as far as like what she really meant to MMA and to women as a whole because she never shown herself to be that kind of activist on the behalf of other female fighters or on the behalf of other women. I've never seen that from her. So they're kind of making her to seem like she's this big important historical figure, and at least when I saw, she never wanted to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there. It's definitely some interesting back and forth conversation there. I'm just not.
But
I
yeah,
just
don't
wasn't
get
too
into the
deep.
color issue though, because you sound like you're getting awful close to that. Because some people might say he's cracking on the black guy and the blonde.
I mean, I just happened to open up two different. I was looking at some news today. I just happened to be doing some reading, and I'm like, oh, he has this to say about one guy, and this to say about his favorite woman. So I mean, it's par for the course. So
Yeah,
like that's neither here nor there. But
at least he didn't call John Jones a thug. At
uh,
least he didn't do that.
I'm surprised. I, I'm surprised that that has not happened.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I've actually had these conversations with a couple people, and they're like, I don't want to really make this to be weird, but the UFC attacks certain kinds of people, and they don't attack certain other kinds. And even though Ronda never had any legal issue, she did a lot of things. She acted a solid way. A lot of media said she acted a certain kind of way, and you never really heard that get out because the UFC took care of her on that, and they haven't always done that on behalf of other fighters. So while I'm not always that guy, I'm not. I can't act like that isn't like the point you made isn't very legitimate. Like there
Yeah.
is something to be said about how they treat people with a certain look and a certain style, and how they treat other people who don't fit into that demographic. Those people might not get protection. Those people might not get Dana White's patience and understanding. Whereas other people, no matter what they do, they're just always going to be given a pass. And other people, the minute you mess up, it's I'm disgusted with them, whatever, you know. And anybody who's paid attention long enough can see the trend in who gets attacked and who doesn't.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, man. So let's see if I had another news piece. That's actually all I had news wise. So let's look into the fights that we got scheduled for this week. I want to start with Bellator 185, where we have Gegard Mousasi is making his Bellator debut, facing off against the former champion in Alexander Shlemenko. Break this fight down for me. Tell me what you think, and how do you see this going?
I First of all, I'm guessing Bellator is really hoping this goes better than their last couple of signings because it's been rough with these big UFC signings they've gotten that have not really panned out for them. Um, I really think that Musassi's faced the better competition. He's the more experienced guy. He's the more skilled guy in pretty much every aspect of mixed martial arts. In general, it really shouldn't be a hard fight for him. He's a better grappler. He, in my opinion, is the cleaner boxer. He's the better wrestler, and he's faced the better athletes and the better skill fighters and the better wrestlers and the better grapplers. So, all things given, he should actually. This shouldn't be a tough fight for him. His thing is his physicality, his kind of variety in his strikes, and his power. And those are all valid things to carry over regardless of the competition or regardless of the organization you're facing. But once again, he's facing a guy who's faced guys with big power. He's faced guys with dynamic striking. It's nothing he shouldn't have seen already. So I really expect Musasi to actually quite handily. I really don't see an area that Shlemenko is better than him in. The biggest thing is Shlemenko usually comes out very hard, comes out very hot, and if Musasi kind of gets to a slow start or lets this guy get some momentum, that could be very problematic for him. Because Shlemenko's shown that he's able to finish guys who are usually known as durable, tough, versatile fighters. He's been shown to finish those kind of guys, and he sets a really high pace, and he's a very physical fighter. Past that, I really don't see him winning this fight. I mean, I still think he could knock Musasi out, but at this stage, Musasi has to know what's on the table for him. I can't imagine him coming out flat or him being underprepared or him being, overconfident. I couldn't imagine he'd do it with the stakes they have for him right now. So I really see it as a pretty clear win for Musasi.
So, what do you think they do with him next? Rafael Carvalho is fighting Alessio Sakara. I think he's defending the title against him later on this year. Do you think that they put him right in the title picture if he gets a win on Saturday?
Yeah, I'd imagine. I would imagine they wouldn't want to mess around with it. I'd imagine they'd want to get right to it and not take any chances with anything and just get him right into the title shot and help legitimize their title a little bit because he's a guy who's competed in multiple organizations and been considered one of the top 3 or 5 fighters in multiple organizations. So I assume if he wins this fight, they're going right into a title fight next. Kind of the same thing they did with Roy McDonald. To kind of get your feet wet, get your timing down. You haven't been active in a while, get you familiar with our fans, and then we're putting you right into a title shot. And luckily for him, the middleweight division in Bellator isn't particularly deep. So, I mean, I can't think of 2 or 3 more people who have a better resume that says they deserve a title shot before him.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. It's definitely not a deep division, but it's definitely I can't think of any other guys that are there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of people right now. I mean, Alexis Sakara, like over Gegard Mousasi, Rafi. I mean, that other guy, he robbed Melvin Manhoff on the first fight. He knocked him out the second one. I'll give him that. But the first fight, he shouldn't even won in the first place. So it's like this is really set up for Mousasi to come in and dominate. It's really a matter of whether he's going to get the job done or not. If he's going to be able to perform. If he can't, there's problems, and it'd be worse than losses at welterweight or losses at lightweight for Benson Henderson because the guys Henderson lost to could fight in the UFC. They've shown they're at that caliber. They've shown that they will be top 10, top 7 guys, maybe even top 5. Shlemenko isn't really considered a top 10 middleweight. And, there's a lot of guys in the UFC I believe would beat him and beat him fairly handily. Maybe in exciting fights, but beat him fairly handily. So Mousasi loses to him. That's a really big setback. That's a really big setback because he's supposed to be one of the very, very best at that weight. And if he gets knocked out, it's it just it just impacts their whole signing, and it makes them seem like they're picking guys who are on the decline. It makes the UFC seem smart for letting these guys go when they did, because once these guys go to other organizations, they're unable to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what, and Cub Swanson's actually fighting out his deal too, as well. So when his fight against Brian Ortega coming up is his last deal on his contract. So it'll be interesting to see what's next for him when he gets out of that fight because, you know, I was talking to Adam about this on Twitter. It's like, is he at that point where he's taking so much damage where we're at the point of diminishing returns? So we'll soon see. But the same thing could be said about Gegard because he has a lot of miles on his body. He's been fighting for a long time. He has a lot of fights there, man. He has a hell of a track record, a great one, but he has been in some fights, and it'll be interesting to see what he has left in the gas tank starting
Well,
Friday,
luckily
excuse me.
he's never been a guy who's been in a bunch of wars and all that stuff. Like he's been in some tough fights, but he's not like a Cub Swanson. I mean, you can think of any 6 or 7 fights Swanson's had that are like wars where he's taken as good as he's given. I don't really know that that's the case with Musasi. He's got a lot of miles on his odometer, but he's always been fairly defensively responsible and disciplined on his offense. So he hasn't really had to take a lot of beatings or take a lot of abuse. And he's always seemed to, while he's fought a lot, he hasn't always fought the very best guys in the world. So it shouldn't have as much of an impact on him as it would with somebody like Swanson. Like with Swanson, I'm thinking, any time in the next 2 or 3 fights he could be gotten. Not because he can't fight anymore, but because he's really taken that much, especially in the past year. He's been in like 2 or 3 fights where he's just taken tremendous beatings. So, or at least recently in the past couple years against Frankie Edgar, against the Korean Superboy, all that stuff. So it's a little bit different situation. If Swanson got knocked out anytime soon, people wouldn't be so shocked because he's slowing down. Musasi still should be on his upward trend at least for another year or two. So him getting defeated, especially by a guy who really isn't in his class physically or technically, that would be a huge upset. People are expecting Musasi to come in here and win. Nobody really said that Henderson was going to go in there and beat Koreshkov. Most people thought he'd be too big, he'd be outclassed. And then when he fought Chandler, people said at best it was maybe 50-50 because of Chandler's athleticism and his ability. But Musasi is a clear favorite here.
So with that in mind, let's look at what else is on the card. I was picking through, and obviously, Heather Hardy is being pushed as a developing star, and people are high on her. She's getting a lot of interview time, getting a lot of press time. I was just looking at a video of her where one of her former boxing opponents ran up on the stage while she's doing her weigh-ins. So she's getting a lot of shine, and they're kind of building her up. What do you think about this fight? She's fighting Christina Williams 0-0, her professional debut. What are your thoughts about that? Schwan, you there? Hello. All right, he just got kicked out. Let me add him back. There
Yep.
you go, Schwan. You back? There
Yeah,
you
I'm
go.
back.
I'm not sure what happened there. So I was asking you about Heather Hardy. Did you hear what I had to say about her?
Yeah, I've actually Heather Hardy's a really good find for them. I mean, because since she still competes in boxing, they're getting double the coverage. They're getting double the mileage out of her. Every time she competes in boxing now, they talk about MMA. Every time she competes in MMA, they talk about boxing. And She's the first legitimate two-sport star in mixed martial arts. And there's not that many in any sport, basketball, baseball, soccer, anything. To do both sports at a fairly high level is actually pretty impressive. So there's a ton of stories that could be made for her, and she seems to be the type of person who wants to, be out there and sell herself and push her organization and make the most of her opportunities. Unlike some people who just, like I said, just want to fight, want to train, want to win the fights. She seems like she's willing to take the whole job on and all the responsibilities that come with it. Not just I'm going there to win. She wants to market herself. She wants to market the organization. She wants to take every opportunity she can to give both sports their props in the media, and not everybody likes to do that. So this has been quite the find for them. They have to be very pleasantly surprised by what she's given them so far.
Is she planning on going back to boxing at any point? Because she hasn't boxed since May of this year. So is she planning on going back?
To my knowledge, she's supposed to try and do both.
Huh. Okay.
That
I
was
wouldn't be
my understanding.
surprised.
They allow her to box. But the thing is, in boxing, there's not a lot of a lot of fights. All the people in women's boxing, it's even more shallow than women's MMA in a lot of cases. There's not a lot of quality fights. There's not a lot of money fights. There's certain places that are going to put you on the undercard when you're a world champion. They're going to put you on, seventh on a card of 10 fights. So you're not getting as many opportunities. The reason she came to MMA is the reason a lot of female boxers start looking at MMA because they don't have as many fights in boxing. So they're going somewhere where they can get some fights and where women are getting some attention. I mean, the attention Ronda Rousey's gotten, or Misha Tate's gotten, or Holly Holmes gotten, what female boxer in the past 5 or 10 years has gotten that kind of attention?
Layla Ali. That's about it.
Yeah,
That
I
was
mean,
before then.
yeah, Christy Martin, Mia St. John.
I mean, the only one I really watch is Clarice Shields. That's about it.
Yeah, and even Clarissa Shields, she hasn't gotten as
Shields,
much
yeah, she
attention as
has.
some of these other people have.
She has not.
So, it's a viable unless you're with the right promoter and you have a certain kind of background and backing, you can make more money in mixed martial arts. You can get more fights. There's whole divisions full of girls in multiple organizations you can fight. In women's boxing, you know, there's a lot of girls who fought 2, 3, and 4 times because the divisions are so shallow. So it's just more opportunities for. As hard as that may be to say for female fighters in mixed martial arts, there's better opportunities than there are to be a professional boxer. There's just the talent pool isn't there because the money's not there. The money's actually it's the opposite in boxing, male boxing and women's boxing. But in men's boxing, the money's in boxing. It's not so much in MMA. In women's boxing, there's more money in women's MMA than there is in women's boxing.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. So, what are your thoughts about that fight? Do you expect her to get the win as well? She's fighting someone who's making their professional debut.
I expect her to. I mean, she fought. I mean, even though the girl she fought had a losing record the first time, that girl had like I think 9 fights, and that the person she fought was clearly durable and looked like she had some size on her, and it was much more experienced. So I'm expecting her when facing a less experienced girl who I'm assuming is going to be a little bit closer to her size. I think she should be able to handle her. They're moving her appropriately. They gave her a pretty tough test right off the bat. She passed that. She got to test all her skills out real time under the big lights, and now she's getting a second time. I don't think they're going to throw her in deep. I think they're going to try to really maximize her, not give her soft touches because with her lack of experience and her lack of amateur experience as a MMA person and pro experience, every fight's dangerous because there's so many ways to lose. But they're going to try to move her up appropriately. I mean, that first win she got, that gave them that more than paid off the investment they put in her. It was an exciting fight. It was a back and forth fight, and it was a fight that a lot of people were talking about across multiple sports, across multiple forms of media.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing what she's going to be doing this weekend. What else do you have? What else stands out for you in reference to this Bellator 185 card?
Uh, not a lot. They had a lot of fights fall out, if I recall correctly. And it's the same problem. I keep saying this, and I feel bad for saying it, but it's the same problem I have with all Bellator cards. There's usually like 2 or 3 fights I'm really interested in, and then the rest of the fights are just so unevenly matched that it's hard to pay attention to them. Like Bellator doesn't have the depth that UFC has. They can lose a fight, bring somebody in, and still have it be at least a fairly interesting fight. With Bellator, it's 3 or 4 people they have in every division, and outside of that, it's really hard to develop legitimate interest and legitimate care for their cards because they just don't have enough depth. They don't have enough name guys. They don't have enough top guys either.
Well, I mean, that's really all I had to hear about that because I wasn't really too looking at too much for this
I
fight
mean,
card.
Rickles was out. He got injured. His
Yeah, he's
opponent got
out.
injured, and he's
Galler's
one of
out
the
too.
yeah. I mean, it's a lot of guys who were there trying to push as stars and names who Bellator has built up fell out of this fight card, which I mean, and they don't have the numbers where they can afford to have guys fall out. They don't have like a Dust, Justin Gaethje falls out. We'll bring in Dustin Poirier. Maybe not a star, maybe not as popular, but a familiar name who's fought on multiple cards, who has a record and enough film on him that you can build excitement. Bellator, you lose one guy and it's like, well, who else do we got? We got Mike Smith from North Carolina, who's 7-3. Okay, well, we've just lost a huge portion of our viewing public because we don't have a fight of a comparable skill of comparable talent to show them now. So that's the problem Bellator's had for years, and they just haven't addressed it yet. I guess they haven't felt they need to address it, or they haven't been able to address it. But it's the same problem with every card. About two or three really good fights I like to see, and then everything else is whatever I can tolerate until I get to the fights I want to see.
Well, there you have it, sir. Let's look at UFC Fight Night 118. And I want to go right to the top here, man. We have Donald Cerrone, Darren Till. I am actually excited about this fight here, and I'm interested in it from a standpoint in I want to see what Till brings to the table. And he may be someone who catches Cerrone at the right time and can use this to elevate his name here. But what are some of your thoughts when looking at this fight here? Till's walking, he's talking the talk, and he's trying to walk the walk. So what do you see happening here?
Well, I admire Till for taking full advantage of the opportunity and not just sitting back there with the typical, I'm just going to do my best. I understand that might be how some guys feel, but when you get the spotlight, you want to talk about getting paid and somebody pushing you. Me and you have talked about this before. Do some of the work and push yourself. Don't tell me it's just another day at the office and then get mad when I don't push you like it's a big event. You just told me it's another day at the office. You told the fans it's another day at the office. You told the media, but now you want me to push it like it's the biggest thing ever, even though you keep telling me it's another day at the office. You're hurting your own cause. You have to help sell the fight. That's part of being a fighter. Um, Till I'm really interested in seeing this fight because the welterweight division is it's been kind of stagnant. It's a lot of guys in the division right now are in their mid to late 30s. So it's like the division hasn't had enough turnover where they have had younger guys who are on the upswing coming into the top 10, top 5. It's really built on guys who are, maybe another year from now, year or two, they won't be elite anymore. So the interest in the fight for me is seeing a young guy who's getting an opportunity to put a stamp on himself and move up to the upper levels of the welterweight division. And as good a martial artist as Donald Cerrone is, and he's the much better martial artist. He's the better wrestler. He's the better grappler. I won't say he's the better striker, but he's at least in the same vicinity, more or less. So he's the better all-round fighter, but he's been slowing down. His durability, which I never thought was great, isn't what it was before. I never thought he was the biggest hitter as far as power, and as of late, he hasn't been nearly as dominant. Wait, he hasn't really faced top guys. The best guy he faced was Robbie Lawler, who hadn't fought in what, a year and a half. Everybody else he's faced, Masvidal is a good guy, but Rick Story, Matt Brown, Cowboy Oliveira, these are all guys who aren't really elite fighters, and all of them really were able to do a lot of damage and put him through a really tough fight. Whether he eventually won them, but it's all fights where he took a lot of punishment and he went a lot of rounds before getting these wins. And I think that's one of the advantages that Till has. Till's a young guy. He's a very big and physical guy, and he's got a lot of advantages over Cowboy as far as the cleanness and his durability and the effectiveness of his striking. The biggest problem for him is A, he doesn't have as many all-round skills as Cowboy, and B, he doesn't really put out a lot of volume. He's a low-volume guy. He slows fights down. He kind of picks away at you, breaks you down, picks you apart, and then finishes you. He's not the kind of guy who works at a very high pace. And so he's already given Cowboy kind of a clear path for victory if he can push the pace, if he can make him work on all fronts. Actually outclass him. I mean, because he's not going to just have to defend the clinch or kicks or punches. He's going to have to defend takedowns. If and when he gets taken down, he's got to defend ground and pound. He's got to defend multiple submissions, whether he's on the top or the bottom. So Cowboy has a lot more ways to attack him than Till. Till, in my opinion, is basically going to come in looking to strike. He might he might even try a takedown, but he doesn't want to really be on the ground with Cerrone. Cerrone's one of the best grapplers in the division. So I really want to say that Cerrone's going to win it just based off experience and the class of fighter he is. But I just don't know. I don't feel he takes his punishment as well as he used to, and he's been taking a lot of punishment over the past couple years since he's moved up. And I think he's ready to be beaten. I just don't know that Till has the experience going 5 rounds or the temperament if he's able to control the pace with his power and his striking technique. If he has to work at a higher pace and Cowboy can get through some rough early waters, I don't know that Darren Till can continue a high pace. He doesn't like to work at one. He hasn't been very effective when he's been forced to work at one. And the higher the pace, the faster the fight's going, the more apt you're going to be to get caught by a strike, a takedown, or a submission. If it goes at a fast pace, as long as he's able to control the pace, he can kind of limit his exposure to those things. But I don't think he's going to be able to control the pace the whole time. I think experience matters, and Cowboy still has a lot of experience. He still faced the best, and he's got the better all-round set of skills. So I'm going to say the Cowboy wins this. I can't say it with a whole degree of faith because the last time he said he didn't know who somebody was, he got knocked the hell out. And I still
Bro,
think that his chin isn't super great, but I
who
can't
did that?
downplay the experience and I can't downplay the gap in skills.
Who was the one who knocked him out?
Jorge Masvidal.
He said that about Masvidal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, that was stupid.
Because after Masvidal
Um,
knocked him out, he goes, "Bet you know who I am now."
oh wow, I totally missed that.
And
Um,
every time he talks stuff before he fought Nate Diaz. He got beat up. He talked stuff before he fought Anthony Pettis. He got beat up. He talked stuff before he fought Masvidal. He got beat up. So it's really hard for me to make this pick because he's been talking again.
I remember he talked junk about Dos Anjos both times.
Yes, yet another case. So it's like every time he starts beating on these win streaks and talking about what he's gonna do, it never ends badly for him. But it's really hard for me to take every single advantage he's had and dismiss it for a guy who the legitimate place I know he's a threat on is on the feet. I mean, Donald's taking down better guys than him. He's fought better guys than him. I don't know that he's probably fought better all round strikers, better all round MMA fighters. So he's vulnerable, but I'm thinking he has enough class and enough experience to figure this out and win the fight. But if he gets cracked hard or that guy jumps on him right away, it's going to go bad and it's going to go bad really quickly.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you there on that, man. I'm not at all. If Darren Till comes out with a win here, are we looking at somebody who has the potential to be a star?
Yeah, I mean, if a win over Cowboy means something. I mean, you saw what it did for Masvidal. Masvidal had multiple wins in UFC. Nobody cared. He beats Cowboy, and we're talking about he's a fight away from a title shot. I mean, he was essentially one fight away from a title shot. Fight, and then if he would have beat Maya. So I think it creates an opportunity because I'm assuming if Till beats him, it's going to be pretty dynamic and pretty explosive and pretty violent. He clearly knows how to talk to people. He has a little bit of a look, and he's a striker, so that's always that always a plus that works in his favor. I don't know that he'd be a superstar, but I think they'd have the makings of somebody they could push and get behind and maybe expand the sport. I think he has some of that potential, and win over Cowboy Cerrone does tend to do a lot of things for people. I mean, look what he did for Raphael dos Anjos, Jorge Masvidal, even Robbie Lawler. He beat him, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, look, Robbie might have something. He might only be a fight or two away from another title fight. So that beating Cowboy means something, and if you beat him in a certain fashion, that also means something. And like I said, they're trying to find younger guys to move up in the welterweight division. It's mostly a division based on guys who are on the decline and aren't really big draws, and they've had multiple opportunities to become draws. So the UFC is looking to force some new guys in there who got some cachet and maybe have some charisma and can develop a fan base and put on the kind of fights that draw fans in.
Yeah, that's definitely looking at that there. Let's look at Carolina Kowalski versus Escobar. What are your thoughts on that fight there? We've kind of forgotten about KK since she's been out.
I feel bad for Escobar because she really should have already been in. She should have at least had a chance at UFC. She fought on Tough House, and they gave the decision to Ashley Yoder. And I have nothing against Yoder, but I don't think Yoder won that fight. The thing about Escobar, she's a good fighter, but she's world class at a lower weight class. And her biggest strengths are her movement, the pace she sets, the volume she throws, how she can get in and out, and how she can be effective in the clinch and when she's on top on the ground. Unfortunately, Carolina Kowalkiewicz, all her strength, she does the same things as Escobar, but she's bigger, stronger, more durable, and better in the clinch. So it's like you're facing a bigger, stronger version of yourself. And Escobar's not a knockout puncher. She's not an explosive puncher. She's not a knockout striker. She's not even really an explosive athlete. Kovacevic isn't like some world-class athlete. You saw her get outclassed by Gedalia. I've seen her get outclassed athletically by Heather Jo Clark and Randa Marcos, but those are two of the better athletes in their division. Escobar is not one of the better athletes in her division, and she doesn't have any dynamic athleticism to level the playing field. Like, it's not like if she just lands one big shot, she can turn the fight around. So she's facing a girl who's faced better athletes, who's inherently faced better MMA fighters and who can match her style and her approach, and also has the addition of being bigger, stronger, more durable. So it's really a fight. They're giving Carolina, hoping that she's going to win, because they still, to me, the organization has some faith in her, and they're basically giving her a showcase fight. It should be a good fight because Escobar's going to throw volume. She's going to come to fight. She's very smart. She won't just get blown out. She's got enough skills to make adjustments and to work her way through tough spots. But if you just look at the matchup based on what they do, what they like to do, and the physical tools, and who's faced the better opposition, it's Kovacevic by a mile. They're just trying to get her back on the winning track, because when she got to the elite level, with the exception of beating Rose Namajunas, and even that fight we could have went either way, to be quite honest, she's been essentially dominated by the other two best fighters in division. Gedalia worked her over. Joanna Jędrzejczyk beat her within an inch of her life. She had one brief moment against her, and even that brief moment was outshone, because then for the next 4 minutes, she just went back to beating her up. They're trying to get her on the winning path and get her kind of back on a winning streak, so they have somebody who they feel they can market in the top five. And this fight is given to her basically for her to win. I think her prior opponent might have fallen out, or maybe it was Escobar the whole time. But either way, this fight was given to her for her to win. They want her to win. They expect her to win. They hope that she wins, so they can move her forward and hopefully get her back on the track to another possible title fight.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that breakdown there. I know, we definitely do cover women's MMA pretty in depth here, so I'm definitely not going to disagree with you at all
I
on
just
that
want to
part.
say I like Escobar a lot, but if you look at the habit, you look at Jessica Panay. She moved up weight, and she had a lot of issues against bigger, stronger, better athletes. You look at Michelle Watterson. Her and Rose Namajunas actually are very similar. Yet when Rose was in clinches with her and Rose took her down, it just looked like they were different fighters altogether. She couldn't do anything physically with Rose. She couldn't move her. She couldn't get her off her. Rose hit her clean. Rose put her down, and a lot of that is just the difference in size, strength, and durability. It's not there, and it's a big thing to ask for somebody to move up and have to face somebody whose style lines up very well with their own style, but it just has all the physical advantages. It's just very hard, whether it's striking, whether it's grappling. It's hard to face somebody who's just as good as you or comparably good, but 2 times bigger, 2 times stronger, and 2 times more durable, and and probably in better shape than you, just because they're moving around a smaller fighter and you're having to move around a bigger one.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that there, man. That's definitely some good analysis there. What else? Aspen Ladd is making her debut this weekend as well. Is there anything that you want to see from her? She was supposed to debut a while back, but she was pulled off the card. But is there anything that kind of catches your eye about her?
I think she has some potential. She's beaten some girls who are in the UFC. Amanda Bobby Cooper, for one, she dominated her and finished her pretty easily. I'm just interested to see what she has. I'm always interested when people move up to that other level, because you see people who are knockout artists in other organizations, submission artists in other organizations. They get to the UFC and all of a sudden they're decision machines. Or they could take the best shots from this class of opponent, then they move up, and all of a sudden they're getting dropped or rocked or knocked out repeatedly by people who aren't even in the top 15 in a certain division. I'm always interested to see how that change in athleticism, where the athleticism balances out and the class of the athlete and the skill of the athlete starts raising, how people respond to that. Because the same, it's like when you watch Tough, you see these guys or girls in the house look like killers. They go in against the number 23 ranked strawweight, bantamweight, and it's a life or death fight for a win, or even in a loss. So it's always interesting to see how they adjust. I think she'll be good enough. I think she'll be fine. But I'm still interested to see how she handles that adjustment, because no matter who they put her up against or what level they're at, it's almost a guarantee they're going to be better than anybody she's really faced.
I'm not going to argue with that there, man. Definitely some good analysis there. Is there anything else that stands out for you about that card?
Uh, there's a couple. There's a couple fights. I say the Marcin Held is always interesting to me, because he was a big signing for the UFC. They got him from Bellator, and he was a guy who was considered young and had a chance to really grow. And he really hasn't been able to get any traction. I mean, I know people say he beat I can't remember, Joe Lazone, but the fact is he lost on the record, and then nobody thought he beat Diego Sanchez. That was one of Diego's best wins in years. Diego out wrestled him and just beat him up. A young guy who, in his prime, has good striking and good submission skills, and Diego just walked all over him. So that was one of his best wins in years, and it was and Marcin Hell was the one who gave it to him. So he hasn't really picked up any momentum or shown that he's had the skill or the promise he's shown in Bellator. So I'm really curious what happens if he loses his fight, because this is yet another fight they're trying to give him to get him on the winning track and get him some momentum. So if he loses this fight, I mean, I would think that he's, if not fired, he's got to be awfully close to it, because I would imagine they paid him good money to come in here, and he hasn't given them any return on their investment at all. I mean, they give you Lozon and Diego because there's a guy who's a younger guy. That's an exciting fight that should get you a good win over a name guy. They're trying to build you. And in both cases, even though people thought he beat Lozon, he still lost. He found some way to lose. And that can't help as far as them getting behind you, them trying to push you, or them trying to put you in a position where they can continually justify putting you on cards or putting you on main cards. So this is a very important fight for him. If he loses, I think there's a very good chance he gets cut.
You think he's going to get cut?
I think so. I can't imagine they paid it. I mean, he looks better against Lozon, but did he look like a world beater? Did he look like a future champion? I've
No,
seen other guys. Huh?
no, he did not.
No, and then I mean, they always give guys Diego Sanchez when you're trying to get a guy going because Diego's chin isn't there. He's not a really great wrestler. He doesn't score easy takedowns. He doesn't just dominate guys like he used to. He can't accept the pace he used to. They gave him that fight, and then he lost it. I mean, it wasn't even exciting and he won. It was exciting and he lost definitively. So, it's like how many times do you give somebody if the guy they're giving him now isn't the guy who's considered one of the best. He's not a name. He's a guy they're trying to give him a chance to kickstart his career. He loses this one. Look at his record then. Look at who he's lost to, and look at where he's at. Now you're not even losing to guys who are legends and names. You're just losing to regular fighters. Like, what are we paying you for? How many chances do we give you before we have to reconsider what we're doing with you?
Hmm.
And the other fight I was interested in seeing, the Artem Lobov fight versus Andre Fili from Team Alpha Male.
Yeah.
Fili actually came in with a lot of hype because, Team Alpha Male usually has the best fighters at the lower weight class. If not champions, they routinely had guys in the top 3 to 5 fighters in multiple divisions and multiple organizations. And Andre Fili's never been able to put fights together. He's won one, lost one. Won one in spectacular fashion, lost one in spectacular fashion. So I also think that he's a guy, though he's been in the UFC for a couple years now, I think he's a guy who's close to getting his walking papers as well, because potential and excitement and talent only take you so far when you're not getting results. And after multiple years in the UFC, he's only 4-4. He's never put a 2-fight win streak together, and he's never put 2 consecutively good performances together. So at some point, you got to start wondering, is it worth having this guy in there? Because he's not good enough to be consistently ranked in the higher levels, and he's only defeated a certain class of fighter, and he's only lost to a certain kind of class of fighter. If he fights Artem Lobov and Lobov beats him, then once again you have him losing to a guy who, that means he's lost 2 fights in a row, and he's lost to a guy who really shouldn't be ranked in the top 15 if you want to go off his actual record and who he's beating. So then you have him losing to a guy who's no longer in that top 15, top 10 caliber of talent or skill. Why are you keeping him around if he's not helping be a talent gauge for younger fighters or being able to beat the elite guys? How do you keep him around? Because that's why we have the top featherweights fighting each other over and over, because guys like Andre Fili can't get over the hump and get to the point where they can consistently challenge for top 10 rankings or challenge for titles.
Yeah, I feel like Feely is someone who came in with a lot of hype because of who he trained with. They definitely had a lot of support behind him, but he has not lived up to it ever since that Thomas Almeida loss. He just hasn't looked like the same type of guy. So I'm not going to disagree with you there.
Yeah, and think about that. The highlight knockout, the only real legitimate knockout that Yair Rodriguez has when he flying kicked him in the head and knocked him out. So I mean, I know he's facing Lobov, and a lot of people don't have a very high opinion of Artem. They figure he's in the UFC for the same reason, because Conor got him in there, and there's a lot of truth to that fight. And his last fight, he was at least competitive for a round and a half versus Cub Swanson. And with the exception of wrestling, Cub Swanson is just a better version of Andre Fili. He's a better boxer. He's a better, more unique all-round striker. He's got a better chin, and he's beaten a better class of opponent, and he's put multiple wins together. So my logic is if Artem can go with a guy who's better in every single possible area, then I don't really think he loses to Feely just because Feely's a better wrestler and a better athlete. Because Feely doesn't always fight very smart. He gives you opportunities to beat him, and Lobov's a savvy enough fighter, and he's really improved under Owen and Roddy. I think he's going to be able to beat Feely, and if he beats Feely, I think Feely's on his way out. I don't think they have justification because now you're losing to a guy who's on the fringe of the top 15. You're a guy who's able to be competitive with the best because you had in the prior years you haven't gotten to the top 10. You just won one, lost one, lost one, and the first time you have a winning a streak is on a losing streak. That's not a good way to keep your job.
Yeah, it's not a good way to keep your job at all. So, I mean, I'm not gonna. That wouldn't surprise me if I saw that Andre Feely's name was among a list of guys who were cut. They haven't done like a mass exodus lately, so it'll be interesting to see if that's coming down the pipe as well.
I mean, if he gets, let's say he gets stopped by Lobov, what do you do with him now?
You let him go.
I
I'm not going to
mean,
disagree with you there.
Lobov's like a 500 fighter, but and I know he took great fights, he fought bigger guys, I get all that. The fact of the matter is he's either under or slightly at 500. How do you justify keeping a guy who just got beat by a guy who's really only beaten one legitimate guy since he's been in the UFC and lost to every single other legitimate fighter? How do we keep you around? If you go life and death with this guy, how do we keep you around? Faber's got a lot of pull. Tim Alfredo's got a lot of pull. But at some point, you got to start making tough decisions. And to me, you can't have a guy who's that inconsistent and hasn't given you any consistent wins or consistent good performances. You can't keep him on your payroll. There's too many other fighters up and coming who need a chance and could actually make some headway in the division. He's been given multiple years at the end, and he still hasn't been able to do it. So at some point, you got to make a decision. And I think if he loses to Lobo, he'll be out in the UFC within the next couple months.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, man. So I kind of want to begin closing out the show today. So tell me, what else are you working on for this week, and what are some of the things that you got coming up?
What I got coming up, I actually did a piece for the Lyoto Machida Derek Brunson fight, kind of one of my breakdowns. For the Poirier, they got Dustin Poirier, Anthony Pettis coming up, I think in about 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to be headlining the card. I did one of my 9 or 10 things you need to know about the fight. Kind of gives you a close look at each fighter. And recently, I just did a piece over about Cynthia Calvillo. It's actually a 2-for-1. I'm going backwards through Cynthia Calvillo, the 3 fights Cynthia Calvillo's had in the UFC. You would look at her through her opponents. Like, she fought this girl, so based on this girl's resume, her skill set, what she's done, and her experience, this is what you found out about Cynthia Calvillo when she beat this fighter. And the first fighter I did was Amanda Bobby Cooper versus Cynthia Calvillo, and I reviewed the fight and reviewed Amanda Bobby Cooper's resume and her skill set, and then based off what I reviewed from that, I determined what I think Cynthia Calvillo is good at doing, what her approach is, what her skill set is, and what her physical talent level is. And I'm basically going to do that all the way up into the Esparza fight. Next one will be the Pro Gonzalez fight. After that will be the Calderwood fight, and then I'll just take it into the Carlos Esparza fight and kind of give people kind of a reason to look at the fight from another perspective, saying, hey, maybe Carlos Esparza has a chance of winning this. And I'm actually going to give them actual technical, strategical, and historical reasons why Carlos Esparza can win this fight based on the previous fights that Cynthia Calvillo has had in the UFC.
I mean, I'm really interested in that fight. I'm really looking forward to it because Cynthia, they're definitely trying to put her on the fast track, and I think she's someone that could do well there. I think she's going to be someone that's very successful in the division. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for her.
Hey, she's an attractive woman. She comes from a Hispanic background, and she can speak Spanish. The UFC's been trying to find a top fighter who has a look, appeals to that demographic, and can actually speak the language. Push for a reason. You are nuts. There's a reason why her and Pro Gonzalez were on the main card on the UFC when one was making her debut and the other one was only having her second fight in the UFC. There's a reason for that.
I mean, I'm surprised Pro Gonzalez is here. I expect her to be cut soon.
You know, but also she has a look, and she might also appeal to a demographic. I mean, it works both ways. I know a lot of times we always talk about it works for the Ronda Rouseys, the Sage Northcuts, the Paige Van Zants. But if you're a person who looks a certain way, even if you're a minority, and you appeal to other minorities in a certain way, or you have the potential to, there's going to be some privilege. I'm not saying it's equal to the other privilege, but there's some privileges to be a certain race or a certain color, coming from a certain background, no matter what it is. You come from a poor background, you're considered tough. You come from this background, you're considered other things. This is an instance where her background might benefit her. Because like I said, she speaks Spanish, she is part of that demographic, and she's attractive, and she can fight. They can promote around that. They can push that. Because those people turn regular fighters and journeymen into superstars because they come out in droves to see them. They can never get 1/10 of that fan support over an MMA. She'll be at worst the second or third biggest name in women's MMA at worst.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that there. Um, yeah, so that's really about it for today's show. We're going to go ahead and close it out. Get back to you guys next week after another long, action-packed weekend of fights. Schwan, as always, man, thank you for joining me. And we look forward to talking next week, man. We will sit down and chat about some more MMA.
Yeah, hey, thank you for your patience. I can now I'll probably be able to get back in the house without any altercations. If anything, I'll just text you later and let you know if I'm in the hospital.
Yeah, hey, I'll send money.
All right, man. You take it easy.
You too, man.